This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Coming up on the payoff. This is like one for the home team. Laura T. She didn't say I could use her last name, but I'm sure I could. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Coming up on the payoff. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Coming up on the payoff. Laura T. This is like one for me. This is like old home week. Laura is from Philly. Well, she's from San Diego, actually, I learned. But she lives and resides, I guess that's the same thing, in Philadelphia right now. She's 10 years sober on August 23rd, 2025. So if you're listening to this and it's past August 23rd, you can toast her to 10 years. But if you're going to toast her, I want you to do it with Mingle Mocktails. That's her line of drinks. She started it, I don't know, maybe like 9 years ago, 8 years ago. Anyways, this is not about Mingle Mocktails, but it is. It's about Laura and her journey in recovery as a working woman, as a mom, as someone who, like me, was from a real good area and a real good family. But you got this thing, man. You got alcoholism. It's not going anywhere. It's the great equalizer, no matter where you're from. And she talks about battling it for decades. And then the ability to overcome, and where she is now is legit magical. And she's just a great guest, a great storyteller. So Laura LT, we'll call her, with Mingle Mocktails, is coming up next. But first, Kevin Souza. All right, so Laura, I like asking this question off the jump. What is your sobriety date?
August 23rd, 10 years ago. So I guess that's 2015.
Wow, how apt is this? So we're literally, as we record today, we're 8 days away. August 20, what is it?
23rd.
So we're 18 days away. Wow.
Yeah, so I better not screw it up, right? That would be really bad for my story.
Well, I love whenever I go, there was a sponsor I used to have, and we would go on a commitment, or somebody in our, sober group would go on a commitment, speak to people or whatever. And on the way home, people would go, "Hey, how'd it go?" Well, nobody got drunk. That's the whole thing. It's just one day at a time,
That's right. That's right. So when I haven't thought about my sobriety date, but what is cool is I'm approaching 10 years. I don't think of it as like a major milestone other than a celebration of my life is going so well. Let's keep doing it, you know?
Well, yeah. And I think it's interesting too, because there's, I put it out there and I think it's important to go, like for me, it's like to go to meetings on an anniversary and around it to talk about it, because like I know that because I love hearing you talk about it, because a lot of times we don't want to celebrate ourselves or, make too much of it. But really, I don't think you can make enough of it. Like, it is such a huge accomplishment. And when we talk about it, it shows people that this thing works.
Yeah, I agree with you. So looking forward to that in a couple of weeks for sure.
All right, so let's get into it. Where did you grow up? Like, exactly.
San Diego, inland, El Cajon. Yep. So I'm a California girl, never thought I'd live anywhere else. And the thing to know about San Diego or El Cajon, when parties were not happening in the high school, arena, we go to Tijuana. So that's a big part of my story.
So talk to me about your trips into Tijuana. What the heck was that like?
Oh my gosh. So, growing up in San Diego, I loved it. I love everything about San Diego, but I have an older brother, and he was like my hero in one way and a really bad influence in another. So he introduced me to Tijuana when I was 15. So that was my first trip, and it just continued from there.
What was your family like, the makeup? Like, was there any kind of alcoholism or drinking issues that you were aware of? Because that was part of my story. I mean, as soon as I could comprehend, my mom was telling me that my dad had something and his whole family was dealing with this drinking thing, So I was
This
pretty
drinking
aware.
thing.
Not that it slowed me down at all, but
Oh,
I was
right. You're
aware.
like, okay, interesting. We'll come
Yeah,
back to that
noted.
never.
Yeah.
No, so like growing up, I was kind of an anxious kid. Um, my brother is the oldest child. I've got two younger sisters. My parents were super busy, both hardworking people, and they did their best. My dad worked for my grandfather's soap company in downtown San Diego. He was a workaholic, and my mom always kind of like hustled. Either she was working with my dad or she worked helping people design their kitchen renovations. So we grew up with a lot of freedom. And, back then, pre cell phones, we played kick the can when we were little kids, and then we'd get into trouble, So it was all about me getting what I wanted, So it started at an early age, but something that I will say that I've acknowledged as a theme, that as much of the effort that I put into like drinking, I always had an incredible work ethic that propelled me in parallel. So, while I almost blew up my life a couple times, I stayed on the tracks.
Yeah, and I think that's like, and that is why I love telling and talking to people about their stories, because everyone is different. There are folks that get sober that seem like they were doing pretty perfectly fine,
Yeah.
like as far as their career and their life, and from 30,000 feet, everything's good, but you get close and it's like, whoa. When you started to drink, how did it make you feel? Like your early experiences, like how did that change?
Very simple. It was like comfort in my skin. So the first drink I had was in fourth grade. It was my parents were not present. My brother had some buddies over and they were drinking beer and they're like, here, drink this. So I drank a beer and started feeling, that weird buzzy feeling when you're that young, like, come on. But I loved it. So that was it. And I don't know how old I was in fourth grade, but my brother quickly exposed me to drinking and other stuff at a young age. And, I was getting into that in grade school, which is frightening as a mother. I'm like, wow. But going into high school, I found it to be very comforting to me. So, like I said, I had this vision of me like working my ass off, getting to college, getting away from my parents, doing my own thing, making my own money. Like I always had this drive to be independent, financially and professionally. I wanted to have a career, but underneath it, you know, I was anxious. I always had self-doubt. I didn't have confidence. I was always second guessing myself, and I'd look around, especially in high school, those girls, Teresa, Shani, Diana, like how are they so like chill with everything? And the only time I felt chill was when I was drinking that weekend with those people and being like, yes, I'm in. But yeah, that's a consistent theme. So I drank hard on the weekends and maybe a couple times during the week,
This
but
is
I
in high
managed
school?
in high school, like
Yeah, yeah.
super hard. And
Yeah.
then, as I said, if there wasn't a good party going on at somebody's house, like the high school crew would relocate to Tijuana. So, do a few beer bongs in the elementary school you used to go to with your girlfriends, and then drive 40 minutes to Tijuana, meet people on the main drag at the cool bars, the high school bars that you knew people were at with their fake IDs saying they were 18. And so there was many a time that, I told my mom I was staying the night at a friend's, but I knew I wouldn't get home till like 3 a.m. So I'd sleep in my car and then roll in, and be like at like 8 a.m. saying, I just want to come home early. And then I'd have to shower up. My parents were very dedicated to their faith, and we always had to go to church on Sundays. So a lot of rough days where that church was like, I wasn't feeling very good. But that was just, it seemed like an integral part of my high school experience. That was the norm.
Did you feel like because you were achieving that it was okay?
No, because I didn't have a model. I played soccer as well, so that kept me out of trouble. And I worked at a clothing store. So as I said, I always had this like hustle side of me where I needed to keep it together so I could play soccer. And I liked showing up for my job. So it was like my life had four different sections. Family was very weak, but the party scene was very important. Career work, my high school job, and the only social really came from outside of partying sports. So that was pretty much who I was.
Yeah, I rotated a little bit myself. I had like the different stops, and I had the quadrants and everything, and mine were pretty much laid out a lot the same, except for I didn't I didn't have a job. Um, so when you're in high school and you're drinking, because I was the same way, you start to drink. Like obviously you drink on the weekends. We say obviously because we're sober now. I mean that's how we operated, and then
Yeah.
but then you start to find time to like drink in the middle of the week, and then you're going to Tijuana. When did you start to run into not even real consequences, Laura, but like in your head? When did you start to like, okay, some flags are going up here. Like this is not great.
There were a couple in particular. One was I got pulled over because I hit something on the way home and I was drunk. I remember it was like a Thursday night because I came home to my mom and a cop drove me home and they have my car and I didn't even get a ticket. And they basically turned me over to my mom and my mom was terrified. What's going on? My dad was working late. So looking back again
My
as a
first
parent,
reaction is thank God. Like the dad was working late, right? Because that's
oh
so
yeah,
terrifying.
I
Yeah.
and he didn't my mom was she was kind of she had to play the dual role of she was like the good cop. Like she kind of kept it under wraps because she didn't there was enough stuff going on that she had to worry about.
Mhm.
And then the other thing was around soccer in high school. I just found that our team was really good. And I just remember one game, I'm like, I can't physically do what I need to do. And I connected the dots to like, well, you were up till 2 a.m. drinking. That might have something to do with it.
Yeah.
So just kind of sacrificing the team more so than just me as an individual. I didn't want to let people down. So that, but other than that, I mean, looking back, I should have seen more red flags, but I just didn't know any other life.
Yeah. You mentioned stuff was going on. Anything you're comfortable sharing? Like, was there family stuff that maybe impacted, just the way you grew up? Like, my dad was a functional alcoholic, so like that certainly. I was telling somebody today, like, I'm forever a people pleaser because I was always just trying to make people laugh and keep it light, and
Yeah.
you're constantly doing that. Did you have something in your house that maybe impacted you a little?
Yeah, there were a couple things. My mom was the drinker, but it was more because my dad was a workaholic. He'd come home at like midnight and he'd be mad if we didn't clean up the kitchen properly. Like that's a whole thing now that we laugh about. I grew up with him having a very firm physical hand, so there was a lot going on there. And my mom, I think the way she coped was she drank.
Okay.
And I do remember times where she was drinking a lot. Um, but I didn't look and say, wow, mom, you're an alcoholic. I was just more like, I don't want to bug them because I don't want to upset my mom. And I certainly don't want to upset my dad.
Yeah.
So I just tried to like really focus on get good grades so you can get out of here and make your own money. So
Yeah.
kind of like that.
I can so relate, especially the firm hand and because we do laugh about it now, like my family, like, and I think a big reason we laugh is because we're sober and we're in a good headspace and we know what it was. But so it's just kind of like you just bring levity to it, because that's the same exact thing. In my family, I could totally relate, especially dad. Like if we would come home and the pillow that was out of place on the family room couch. I mean, and then there was two other things. It was just like, Look out. Look out.
Yeah, but what I would say is, especially as a parent now, they did the best they could. So that
100%.
helps me just completely say, I love them,
Yeah.
they're my parents. So, but they did the best they could.
All right. So talk to me about college. Like what or after high school, like you're getting done high school. How do you choose what you're going to do next or where you're going to go next? And like, how does alcohol play a role in that?
Yeah, well, I did gloss over that there were some substances in high school that I don't like to get into
Yeah.
because it's just, it was very much intertwined with alcohol. And I couldn't get those substances in college because my brother was supplying them. And so I had to rely on alcohol. And the reason why I picked my college, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, was me and some girlfriends from our clothing store. We went up there on a weekend called Poly Royal, which was their party weekend. And to me, I was like, this is it. This is where I want. Like, Welcome to the Jungle was playing at this backyard, like, kegger party. And I'm like, this is everything. So I came home from that weekend of partying with my girlfriends and I said, I want to go to Cal Poly. And they're like, that's great. It's a great school academically. So it's just funny. That's where it started. But in college, I think it was just a whole different type of social anxiety where I had to kind of figure it out. Didn't really have a great model. Road crew to try and get plugged into something. Eventually joined a sorority. But what I would say is there were a lot of blackouts. And I have my very, very best friend, who is still my friend today. I met her on the crew team. And she was the one that would be the next day, like, she'd be like, do you remember what you did? Laura, do you remember? And, half the time I wouldn't, but most of the time it would just be like regretful behavior, saying something I didn't mean to say or doing something I didn't mean to do. So the consequences were social, although my parents did give me a car that freshman year, which I happened to like drive drunk and sideswipe some cars in a parking lot, driving some friends home. So that went away. As a consequence to that, though, my parents engaged an attorney through a good friend who was an attorney. And that local attorney, since I couldn't afford to pay him his fees, they had me clean their house, which looking back, I'm like, really? And they're like, she's not very good at this. They had young children. They're like, can you babysit? I'm like, I can do that. And that ended up being such a lovely, safe, awesome space for me because they were a wonderful family. I enjoyed like getting away from the whole college craziness and having quiet time with their kids. I was a really good babysitter, but that whole car getting pulled out, hitting some cars led to some stuff. But ultimately, it was a nice little outlet after all. It was a great family.
Man, I swear I'm only mentioning this because I see the parallels. When I was in college, I got a DUI and my dad worked for Amtrak. And somehow, some way, I still don't understand. There was like an ability to get an attorney through Amtrak. It wasn't like an Amtrak attorney. It was like something they had going. I don't know. So I had got an attorney in Virginia somehow through a connection of my father's. And, just the same deal, like you're working it off. It's just like, so interesting. These are not things that, 19 and 20-year-olds should be like totally wrapped up in right at that point in time. But that's what we were wrapped up in,
I know that's why we're talking on a podcast and not with my neighbors.
Yeah, exactly.
They'd be like, what? What? I'm like, yeah, hello, that's me.
I get the idea. I mean, you're buttoned up now. Were you buttoned up in college, even with the drinking? Like, did you have that appearance on the outside? Like, oh, Laura's got her stuff together?
When I got my first job, I did. Like, it was that next phase. So very goal oriented. I'm like, I need to do well in college to get a good job. So I stayed focused on that aspect of doing well in school so I can make my own money at a good company. So buttoned up, not so much, more like focused on graduating and getting a good job.
The last thing on college and like the substances stuff, like you mentioned, was your inability to get those, did that just totally accelerate your drinking? Because that's what happened to me. I moved around And there were some spots I could get, you know, what I like to do, and then some spots when I moved, I couldn't. And I would just like double, triple on the drinking, and I became a complete mess.
I've never thought about it that way. It was just more of sliding over and being like, "This is what I got to do."
Okay.
So it was already it was bad enough.
Yeah.
It was bad. I don't know that it. I think the accelerations happened at times throughout my college career where I just felt uncomfortable. So I can't point to that going even harder, but it was bad enough.
Let's get to the first job. So how do you maintain functionality in your first job? Somebody that's an alcoholic but is very, very driven and goal oriented.
Well, my first job, it was a great company, and they had this training program where they'd hire 15 students out of college and put you up in a hotel near their headquarters in Milwaukee. It was a company named Rockwell Automation, Allen Bradley. I never planned on ever visiting Milwaukee before, so it was a novelty, but it was focused on training people to become sales engineers. It was a great job. So I planned on doing that and then going back to either LA, well, really LA. And when I went out there, I did have the suit. Like, I'm like, this is it, I've got my job and my paycheck, So that was a really big feeling of independence, having that apartment with my roommate. There were like 12 guys and 3 girls because we were all engineers. And what I found was, again, you look around when you go out at night at the bar as a group, and I'm like, I'm drinking Goldschlager like there's no tomorrow. And just taking shots of it to get to that place as fast as possible. And, when I was too far into it, like I noticed nobody else was doing it at the rate I was.
Yeah.
So, I had to watch myself. I had a few slips where I let that like crazy drinking Laura come out, but I had to work really hard to like keep it in control. It was hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it was impossible for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure people have stories. I really just, but at that same time, what's so crazy is I met who is now my husband. So that was kind of nutty where he was and still is a very happy-go-lucky social drinker.
And
he
he's
could
an
have
engineer
one.
as well.
Yeah.
Why do engineers stick together? My fiance, her whole family, they're engineers. It's amazing.
I don't know. I mean, it served me well then, and it got me my guy. And
oh, that's great.
Yeah, but I had to. What I enjoyed at the job, and then after when we continued to work together, was he liked being social and he liked drinking, but not like let's go hard, more like let's meet at the bar, let's go to happy hour, let's go out this weekend. It was all about the people. And meanwhile, I'm like, yes,
it's
this
a great
guy
place
likes
for us to hide out, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, you just mirror it. But I would drink as much, if not more than him. So, he's having a few drinks and then I'm blacking out. So luckily, he didn't stop and say, Laura, you've got a drinking problem, because I think he just thought I drank a lot.
Yeah.
No.
Because you're getting stuff done.
Yeah, I'm working.
Yeah.
I'm working. I have my career, but there were definitely times, like if I were to count in all these chapters of my life, there were multiple blackouts that happened with varying consequences. And, I just stopped keeping track because it was hard. But there was a time at that period, we bought our first house. We ended up getting married, working in Chicago. And there was a milestone moment where, again, I just was drinking too much to like feel okay. And one night he wasn't there, but I drank 3 bottles of red wine and woke up to 2 things. One, there was vomit on my pillow, so I could have choked on vomit. Like, I don't even remember that. And then 2, I found a letter I wrote to my most favorite aunt. And I wrote how crazy in my head I feel and how broken I feel. When I talk about feeling uncomfortable, I just want to clarify. It wasn't like I was like, oh boy, I feel anxious. I felt freaking broken. Like I thought I was a loser. I didn't get the memo on how to live my life, so everything I did, I felt like it was figuring it out for the first time. So I just felt like I had to put a lot of effort into everything. And I second guessed myself every step of the way. And that's a lot of stress for a kid to build a life on. So, I wasn't talking to my husband saying, boy, I just feel broken inside, honey.
Yeah.
Instead I'd be like, let's have another bottle of wine. This is great.
Yeah.
But reading that letter was enough for me to see a therapist on my own. And she told me, she's like, I think you want to try AA. She just said it straight up. And so I went to a meeting and it felt amazing. It was in Hinsdale, Illinois. Yeah. And
Wow.
I don't know what inspired me, but I got sober for almost a year. So I got exposed. I got a taste. I met some girls.
Did you get a sponsor?
I got a sponsor.
Okay. Yeah.
She was younger than me because something I found was if I could find somebody I can manipulate, So, but she did her best with me and I learned about the program in a healthy way. And then I got pregnant with our first child. And so towards the end of the pregnancy, I think I stopped going to meetings because I was like, well, obviously I'm not going to drink.
Yep.
And then I think when our son was a couple months old, I started drinking again, like right away.
Under no protest from your husband?
Well, I remember that first glass of wine was in a cup where he didn't know it was wine. I'm sure I told him what other people hear or you see on TV, which is like, honey, I'm just going to have one or two, right? And he's like, cool, I trust you. I love you.
Yeah.
And I was back to the races, just full force.
You know what I learned in situations like that? People who love you will actually take you for your word. Like, I'm like, okay.
I know.
Like you're an adult, you're sitting across from them. They trust you, and it's like what we do with that. And not that this was some heinous thing that you were alcoholic, you were going to drink. That's how we manipulate, that's what we do. And we're pretty clever at it. And so you start to drink again. And for me, I did the same damn thing. I stopped drinking for a year. And then I started smoking weed, and then eventually I started drinking again. And the people in my life were accepting that I was going to drink again, right? I mean, by the time this was like I was 26, like people were going to like lie, you couldn't do anything. A couple people were like, I remember my father so well being like, you're going to go right down the drain again. And me being like, no, I won't. I'm good, and I went right back down the drain. But like I had a positive experience with AA. I did. I mean, I knew, and I would never recommend this to anybody because when we go out and do more research, we can die, but I did always know I had a place to go and that shit worked. Like I felt good about myself. Like what you're talking about, like I felt broken. I didn't know why. I was so broken. I didn't even like know anything about like what it was, like, how I felt. Like I was just so out to lunch, drinking all the time, doing drugs, where I really kind of thought I was okay. And I wasn't. And this AA had shown me how to live, and I felt whole. But of course, like the pull, I just, whatever, and so I started to drink again. Being an alcoholic, that's what we do. And I didn't take the proper steps, just like you. I'd stopped going to meetings. But now I'm talking about you're sober. I mean, you're drinking, you've had the year sober, like the stakes kind of get high, right? Because
you got a kid too. And I still have a career, which, that was like my goal, now I have a husband, a child, a house, a career, on the outside, it looks pretty good. Right. But that brokenness like you said, I had a positive experience, thankfully. So I knew it was there, but I didn't come back to it until like, I'd have to do the math, but like 10 years ago, whatever that was. Because we moved from Chicago to Philly, and there's no way I'm going to relocate and meet neighbors sober. Like, come on. That's kind of like all the people say, you're not going to go to a wedding sober. You don't, whatever. I'm like, there is no way, like, not happening. So we plugged in. It was a drinking neighborhood. It was just kind of, again, back off to the races. Had some blackouts where my husband the next day would be like, yo, there were times in Chicago as well, like after my son's christening, man, it was I drank so much that in my friend's kitchen, I slipped on her kitchen floor and bumped my head on the floor right at my eyebrow where it was just gushing blood. And my husband's like, we need to get you to the ER. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Like whole time there's like blood dripping down my face. I'm like, I don't want to leave the party. Yeah. But then he finally takes me to the ER. And mind you, my parents are in town visiting because it's my son's. Oh, it's his first communion. Yeah. Lovely. Right. So at the ER, I remember this lovely doctor. It was a woman and she's stitching me up. And I remember saying to her, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, when you're just so vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm sure the booze was kind of wearing off enough. I've got needles going into my head and I'm like, this is not normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the next day I do remember that conversation with my husband. And so we agreed I'd only have a couple drinks. And so what I would do is it became a game and I'd have a couple drinks before we went out, it became a game, like challenge accepted, back to like, you love your partner, but it doesn't mean you're going to set aside your alcohol for that. Like, I'm not going to give that up. So it became like a fun game. And I did hide alcohol in my consumption for the duration of that period until I don't know. Oh, I know what it was. Like, couple blackouts.
This is now in Philly?
In Philly.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple conversations. I don't know what the final straw was because I do a good job of just putting things in the emotional basement and wrapping it up. And sometimes I actually am like, what was it?
Yeah. Well, what was it? Was there one thing that what landed you, if you can remember the 48 hours before you walked into that meeting on August 23rd, 2015?
I don't remember the exact event, but it was a culmination of having my career that I worked so hard for and having to manage my drinking in that work environment. It became harder and harder. And then managing my drinking in our social environment and then managing my drinking at home. It's like all of a sudden I'm like, I can't handle these 3 slices of my life and how to drink responsibly. Like I was getting crushed. And I just think I got to the point where I knew that if I didn't stop drinking, something really bad would happen. I just knew. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Something's got to give.
Well, what's interesting too is and that first, we will call it incorrectly, failed attempt at getting sober really does. Again, I would never recommend anybody go out and experiment. Like even in the big book, we say go out and try some more research. Like nowadays with drugs and stuff, I don't feel comfortable saying that to anybody. God willing, you'll get it the first time. But that first time where you and I both went back out, you do know it makes that second time, as much as it's like walking into an AA room after years of drinking alcoholically is ultimately damn near impossible. It's less impossible than the first time, for me, at least it was because it's there. It's kind of and it works. So you walk into that meeting and what happens to your life? I mean, obviously not right away, but what starts to change for you early on when you stop drinking? And what do you do to make those changes happen?
So I did have some relapses along the way. And my sponsor at the time said, you need to get to different meetings. And it was that 7 a.m. meeting that like cracked the code on like, get your shit together, stop making excuses and fucking do the work. That was it. I'm like, okay, I needed to learn how to act professionally in these work environments. Like, how do you take a train home from DC with a bar cart and not get hammered? Like, I needed to know like the rules of the road on some basic stuff. And they taught me that. My last relapse, though, I remember it was on our back patio. My parents were visiting for something. I drank. My husband knew I had drank. Everybody knew, but didn't talk about it. I had the crazy eyes. And the next morning I asked my mom if she'd go on a walk with me. And I sat down with her at a bench at this park. And I said, I have a problem, Mom. And she said, listen, there is a gray cloud that floats around on your dad's family, your dad's side of the family. There's a lot of addiction there. And you need to get help. So whatever it is you have to do, you need to get yourself help. And I had told her, I was talking to some women in AA. She's like, you need to start really focusing on that and make it a priority. And hearing my mom, who is like an angel in my eyes and somebody who's always had my best interests at heart, I'm like, okay. So that was the final, like, I got it. I plugged into a meeting where I saw what I wanted. And I started doing the work, starting with the 90 and 90, because I finally listened. And at that point, my life started getting a lot less complicated.
Where was the bench?
I was at an arboretum in Berwyn, just right down the way, still to this day.
So that's like, I asked that because you did such a magnificent job telling the story that I felt like I was there on the bench. And like, those are the moments like that completely like change our lives, like when whatever you were all the way willing, right? At that point in time, it's magical.
Yeah, it was a moment. And still to this day, I'm like, if my mom says I need to do it, I need to do it. And I just know I can. I know I'm capable. So I knew I had it in me. I just had to make it a priority. So, while it was really hard to exist in that work environment and the social environment, I really kind of became less social for at least a few months, where I told my husband, I'm like, I can't go out there to the friend's barbecue where all I'm going to be thinking about is what people are drinking it. I just can't. So I had to like huddle up and kind of isolate myself a little bit so that I can protect my sobriety. And then, I started achieving experiences sober where I'm like, okay, I can go to a business dinner and drink, sparkling water in a wine glass. I can go to our friend's barbecue and bring diet ginger ale so I don't get asked what I'm drinking,
Yeah.
And I know Claire. I used to say like,
Legend.
Yeah, legend. She was my first sponsor out of the chute when I was at 7 a.m. And she said, people don't care what you're drinking or not drinking. If they're not, if they're drinking, they care about what they're drinking. So get over yourself. And I'm like, okay, all right. So I just tried to make myself comfortable. And that was a good foundation to go, okay, you can live your life, but you need to be very protective of your sobriety.
What started to happen to you as far as like work and family once you started to, when we eventually turn a corner and life becomes very, very enjoyable. I mean, of course, it's life. Life is life. Like it's not, nobody delivers you this perfect day, let alone lifetime, where everything's going to be seamless and fun. But when you're sober, there is that something that I never thought I would find. And I found it because of AA. And it was the same thing that I got from alcohol and drugs. Like when you started to get that feeling, when sobriety was rounding you out, making you feel whole, how did your family pick up on that? Were there any moments where you were like, wow, this is awesome. Like I am feeling amazing and I am look at them, they're loving this. It's just like, it's such a gift.
I want to fast forward to, it was either Mother's Day or my birthday this year. And we were sitting at this table and my husband said, let's go around the table and talk about what we love about mom. We don't do that. We're not that kind of family. Like
Yeah.
it was, I don't know why he did that.
Yeah.
But my daughter is now 21 and my son is 23. And they spoke of me as being a role model and an inspiration and, always there for them and so supportive. Like the things they said about me, that's everything. So knowing that because of being sober, I've been able to be present to help my kids be the best that they can be and really support them like I wish I was supported.
Yeah.
And do it with just such a warm heart. My son went through some stuff too. My kids went through stuff, but I worked with people in the program to help them through it. So how my life changed was I remembered everything. Instead of feeling hungover the next morning and trying to overcompensate by working even harder, I felt like I had the energy of two people. I became hyper productive at work. I always did a good job, but I was just like on fire, working late at night because I'm like, woo, finding this energy and just spark. And then the other thing that happened was, how I talked about feeling broken. I was able to unpeel myself and truly understand why I felt broken. There was some family trauma that happened when I was in grade school that was the source of the breaking. And once I was able to look at that and go, oh, it wasn't my fault. Laura, a therapist told me, she's like, you're a survivor, Laura. The fact that you've gotten this far after what you've been through, it's a testament to your internal power of survival. So if you take that and put it into a sober person, I was able to build muscles of confidence that I never had. Like, I can do this. If I can do this, I can do that. If I can do that, I can do this. And I just kept piling on. And I wasn't like, I want to rule the world. I just finally was able to do things confidently that I always wanted to do, but I was afraid.
Yeah.
So
do things confidently that I had to get drunk to do confidently. Now I can. Yeah. And when I started to do them sober with confidence, I was blown away. It was like an ROI. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And what you said about the trauma and stuff, for people, if you're just listening to this and maybe you're just stopping drinking or maybe you've been around forever. And I know that a lot of my deep wounds, like I didn't figure them out. I'm still figuring out some of them, right? I mean, it is not something where you just like pick it up overnight. Like it takes a while, and it takes a while because that's the way it goes. And honestly, it's supposed to. Like that's my experience on it. Like everything happened at the right time, but I still discover stuff where I was so like you mentioned, I pushed it down so deep and had been like, I'm not saying I like blacked it out of my memory, but I was like, oh, that wasn't a big deal. Like that was, it's just something like it happened, hey, throw your problems in the middle of the room. Like with everybody else, you take yours back. Like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There's also like, there's certain things like you need to examine and share, and just give them the power that they deserve. Right. And so that's awesome. I love how you shared that.
Yeah. I think it's also truly like rewiring or taking a house that was maybe broken down and taking it down to like the raw foundation. And that's the way I feel like I have evolved, where, all that crappy stuff was taken away and still pops up now and again. But I was able to build the bones of a person that the person I am today is a person I'm very proud of. And yes, I'm still uncomfortable about stuff and I have issues with fears of failure and all that, but at least I know where it's coming from. And I can say, Laura, that you are feeling fearful, but feelings are not facts. You're just having a crappy day. So get to a meeting, you know, like that, just our ability to cope with things. You know, I'm not perfect, but my life is so much better now, you
Well,
know.
you illustrated you understand why you feel the way you do, and that's something that
Mhm.
I understand. I've done enough work, like, and I don't want to. That's even not the right. I've done enough work, but I've been around AA and been sober long enough that like I just understand why I act the way I do, right and wrong. You know, like so I can press pause and share with another alcoholic, get to a meeting, or pray or something that will slow me down and shut that fear down and bring reality in. I want to get. I want to take all day with you, but I have to talk about because it sort of happened with me too. Like when I was sober, I guess like 8 years or 7, 8 years, I started to do this, right? I wanted to use any little platform I had to share my story and to have people start to share theirs. You started with mocktails, and it's been like you've been a force of nature, and you've been not only like providing people with like a joyous outlet, but you've also been helping them. And I want to hear about that. Like, give me the backstory on how this whole thing started. Was there a moment? I guess we'll start there.
Yeah. So, you know, I mentioned this is a drinky neighborhood. I remember we were at a friend's Super Bowl party. There was a bunch of soda for the kids, a bunch of booze for the adults. I ended up finishing a 2-liter bottle of sparkling water, like like Canfields.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that sucks. And that same host, she's like, let's go to a weekend in the Poconos. Like, let's get some girlfriends. And I went, there's going to be a lot of drinking. So I decided for some reason to make my own mocktail. And we went to the Poconos, and I had this like 1 liter sparkling pink stuff that I poured in a wine glass and sat down with my girlfriends. And I was like, it was such a different experience for me personally that it felt great. But, you know, talking about that awareness, I was like, this feels so good. I want other women in sobriety to have this choice, this freedom, you know, this feeling of social connection that I so craved. So I came home from that trip, and instead of coming in to see my family, I went to my office and I just started like banging out information and doing research. And at the time I worked for Tableau software, which is very much about looking at data and trends. And I'm like, I think this space is going to blow up eventually. You know, here's plant-based, here's kombucha. So this is where I do think the higher power came in and was like, hey, Laura, we're going to just guide you to do things that you don't even know you're doing. Like build a business plan, like talk to people who are in the industry, challenge yourself and figure out why companies like this fail. So I created a company in 7 months on the side, like literally working at night and on the weekends. I ended up launching Mingle Mocktails with the sole intent to provide people a non-alcoholic option in social occasions directly geared for people like me. Like people, not people who are like, oh, this is so nice to have. It's like, no, you're in recovery and you want to live. Like there's a big difference. So I still take it very seriously, but I was doing samplings in Carlino's Market in Ardmore. I don't know if you know it.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure you
Of
do.
course.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
That was there was this gal, she gave me a break around Thanksgiving. She's like, just sample every weekend. And when I was doing samplings, the response was good. People didn't know what a mocktail was at the time. So they're like, what's this? And so I spent a lot of time educating people on not just what the product is, but more around like, not everybody drinks alcohol, you know, like me.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like. And what I found, though, a lot of people said this would be a great mixer. So I added that to the label, and I talked to my husband, Mr. Happy, Responsible Social Drinker. I'm like, this kind of does everything I wanted to do. I want to engage in all social occasions with the least amount of friction. So now I love that Mingle is a flexibly mixable mocktail. It's fruit-based. It does not have any triggers. Like that's the beauty, is like it's safe, but you feel like you're having a cocktail just without all the consequences. You know, there's no trigger. You can have 2 or 3 and not feel like you're breaking your program. So it's been rewarding because of the underlying mission of the brand. It's also been interesting to see how this category is blown up and now it's very fashionable.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, yo, I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'm an expert in this space. You're just like a guy with a lot of money just
Yes,
looking
I
to make
totally
a buck.
agree. Yeah. Yeah, no,
So
totally. Yeah. That's when we work on resentments. I have the same thing with this stuff. I'm like, yeah, I've been doing this for like 7 years. Now everybody's doing it.
yeah.
Totally. So what are some of the milestones that you've achieved with your business? Like, you know, TV appearances, obviously like profitability, like just like what have you seen that's been because we talk about esteemable acts, whether it's you're a 19-year-old kid and you can't put two sentences together, and then taking out the trash as a sober young man builds esteem for you. One day, 10 years from now, it may be owning your own business. Like for you, like you talked about the esteemable acts at home, but now you're doing them in your professional life, starting something brand new, which takes risk and like there's fear of failure. You're knifing through all that stuff with, I would imagine, sobriety and help from others. But like, when did you start to feel like those jolts of real good vibes through this mission?
I mean, there's been so many. I'll just tell you, I got an email a little while ago from our buyer at Total Wine. She wants to do an exclusive flavor next summer. Like, that's so cool. To be included in the largest liquor store of America with the non-alc, I'm like, yes. It's not about the money. It's about the recognition and validation. And, we were out in Whole Foods a couple weeks ago in Austin and they celebrated me. They're like, your product is so high performing. It's dominating. So those are like nice wins, I crave that not for my ego, purely for business achievement. Like, so there's my business side where I'm like, I want to fucking kill it and grow this business and go. Like, I work my ass off. I still do. So like, let's go. But on the personal side, my husband said, like last year, he said, Mingle has given us so much as a family. And I said, what do you mean? So our daughter has interned with Mingle. She's, a senior in college now, but she's always interned with Mingle. She got another internship, but she learned so much there. The big milestone is my son dropped out of college at Temple almost 3 years ago, and it was devastating for a parent. That's like a failure,
Yeah.
and I learned how to cope with it, right? I followed others who've been there before
By
me.
the way, can I just say from an outsider, unsolicited advice, it sounds like you're raising a human being. Like you're dropping out of school. Like that's shit people do, you know?
But Pete, until it's your kid,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what I
yeah.
will
Okay,
say.
yes,
It
yes,
sounds
yes.
like it,
Yeah.
but I've heard dads share in meetings and go like, I suck. My kid dropped out of school. Like, and I'm like, that's not that bad. But now I'm in it, right? So he kind of bounced around in some jobs, and I was going to hire somebody to do like logistics and just kind of crappy stuff. And he's like, I'll do it. So fast forward, it's been almost 3 years and he is fucking killing it. Like he is so irreplaceable that we, seeing how he's grown as a human being, he has more maturity than people in his buddies,
Sure.
because he's been like working in life instead of going to school. And it's been an absolute pleasure to see him thrive and push me to be better. So he's great. Yeah, that's been a huge one.
Well, it's funny, like then that's kind of the way God works out. And I'm not saying that everybody should take that route or whatever, but very rarely do you have an opportunity to have a front row seat and then become involved at a business as it grows, right? And like to learn there. That's like the ultimate like co-op or whatever, like
But with your mom, like,
Yeah.
so that could add a complexity.
Yeah.
And we had a bumpy road where we agreed in the first month, we agreed it wasn't going to work out. I'm like, he was showing up late. And then my husband had a chat with him and said, dude, like, this is your mom's life's work right now. So you have an opportunity, you can take it or you can go somewhere else. And that like just kind of put him in a gear that I had not seen. And We talk daily, and he calls me out on my shit, which is great. But more importantly, to see him come into his own, where I get a front row seat to that, is pretty amazing.
It's all amazing. All right. Anything we left out? Anything else? Because this has been pretty awesome.
Well, I always like to say, no matter where you are in your sober journey, or if you're just listening to this out of curiosity, I think something that I've learned is that whatever you're afraid of, it's just bigger in your head than it is in reality. And don't let fear or fear of failure prevent you from doing something that could potentially change your trajectory. Like, that's something I have learned, that it's the one piece of advice. Like, if you're afraid of something, that means you should probably do it. That's where you grow. So don't let that get in the way of your path.
I'll tell you kind of a cool story too, now that we're talking, because I had thought about this. You talk about growth. Like, I think like 9 years ago, when you started this, we had communicated a little bit, because I was working in TV news at the time.
I found the email.
I was not at all where I wanted to be. I was in Monroe, Louisiana. I just started like kind of like a buttoned up news job. It's just kind of where my path took me. And we had a great exchange. Like, I feel like you were helpful to me. I feel like I was able to tell you, like, because I did work on a morning show. So like I gave you the rhythms of like what they're looking for, and what we kind of take the bait on as a station when people are pitching stuff. And now, I mean, look, I am far from a finished product, as I'm sure you admit about yourself. But I mean, look at our progress together over the past decade, just literally staying sober, and just, you show up, you do the deal, like the whole deal with sobriety, and amazing things can happen. And there are setbacks, like there've been for you or I over those 10 years, but you keep going. And it's pretty cool. Like, God rewards honest effort, not wishful thinking, is what my sponsor says. And I love that,
And Pete, I have watched your career, and I did find that email a couple of days ago when I was looking up your phone number or something. I'm like, oh, yeah, because we were talking about publicity. And like you said, you were in this far-flung place, and here you've pushed yourself into major stages where, and you're not done yet, by the way. Yeah. So it's so cool to see you continue to grow in a way where this is what you should have always been doing, but now you're doing it, you know?
Yeah. All right. Well, this is about you. Laura, thank you so much. You're the best. I really do. I'm so happy we got a chance to do this. Like, I feel like I got to know you better, and better than that, I feel like a whole lot of people got an amazing, inspiring story. So I can't thank you enough. Oh, by the way, so let's do a little Mingle plug. So go ahead. Let's go.
Mingle Mocktails, a line of alcohol-free cocktails, so everyone feels part of the party. Our big retailers are like Whole Foods, Total Wine, Wegmans, Publix, and more. But I just want people to know that appreciate your support in any way. But really, we're excited to be a part of making sure everybody feels like they have something for them. Yeah. So minglemocktails.com.
Laura, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Pete. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.